Hello, this is Dr. Brandon. In these slides, we're going to be talking about St. Augustine and the best possible world. So basically, St. Augustine is going to use the free will defense to argue that God is not responsible for evil in the world, but he's going to add to it by talking about the best possible world. And so, in a way, he's going to respond to Mackey's objection, even though he was writing this, 1,500 years before Mackey. But Mackey's basically raising an objection that St. Augustine had already considered. And the text that this comes from is called On the Free Choice of the Will. Let me just start with a quote here from St. Augustine. Many people go astray when they have seen better things with their mind, because in searching for it with their eyes, they look in the wrong places. They are like someone who understands perfect roundness and is angry because he does not find it in a nut, if that is the only round object that he sees. And so what St. Augustine is saying is that we can imagine a perfectly spherical object in our minds. Just think of a sphere, right? In your mind, it's perfectly spherical, but you're never going to find a physical one in reality. You're never going to find a physical object that's perfectly spherical. It will always have imperfections. And so what he's saying is, he's saying you're looking at humans and you want them to be perfect, but you're looking for perfection in the wrong place. That's what he's saying. And really what he's saying is he's talking about superior beings, just as Mackey was in a way, right? He's saying there can be creatures that have free will and are all good. They always do good things. Here's what he says. In the same way, some people see by the truest reason that a creature is better if it is so firmly dedicated to God that it will never sin, even though it has free will. Beings with free will who always do good, superior beings. And that's what Augustine is talking about. They're talking about the same thing, Mackey and Augustine. And they both agree that God would create, if there were a God, that an omnipotent, all good being would create the best possible world. And such a world should have superior beings in it because they're superior. So they agree on those things. And Mackey's objection is really being stated by Augustine. Then, when they look upon the sins of human beings, they do not use their sorrow over sin to stop people from sinning. They bemoan the fact that human beings were created in the first place. He ought to have made us, they say, so that we would always enjoy his unchangeable truth, so that we would never will to sin. That's the complaint that Mackey was making. Why are there humans? God should have made us better. Either God doesn't have the power to make us better, or God didn't want to. Either God is not omnipotent, or God is not all good. And Augustine's raising that exact same complaint, but he's going to respond to it differently. Augustine is going to say that there are superior beings. They don't exist on earth, they're in the heavens, wherever that is, whatever he's saying, right? And of course, for him, he's talking about angels, but again, whatever you want to think of as a superior being, and all Augustine is saying is that they exist somewhere. That's what he's saying. Um, so that's what he's saying here in this quote, right? That if these beings are truly superior, then of course an omnipotent, all good being would create them. But that's not the real question. The real question is about the inferior beings, humans. Why do humans exist then? Why didn't God just make the superior beings and stop? Why are there humans? Why creatures with imperfections? And Augustine's answer is that such beings do add goodness to a world. Why? Because he thinks something is better than nothing. Because he thinks that evil itself is really a kind of nothingness. And that's what we're going to see in the next slide. Evil is the privation, right? The absence of good. And one way to think about this is to think about something like light and darkness. How do you understand light and darkness? Darkness is really just the absence of light. And light is something real, physical, photons, right? Particles. And so if there's light, there's got to be something real there. And if there's darkness, there's the absence of light. So light is something, darkness is nothing. Heat and cold is the same. Heat is the vibration of molecules. Cold is the absence of that vibration. If you take a physical object and you can freeze it and get it down to absolute zero, the molecules in that object would stop vibrating. So heat is a kind of motion, and cold is the absence of that motion. Cold is really nothing. And the same idea with good and evil. Good is something, right? And evil is There's nothing. That's the idea, right? And what are they talking about? Good is the qualities of something, really, right? And so a rock is good, but a plant is better because it can grow and reproduce, and an animal is better, it can grow, reproduce, and move around. And a human is better, it can grow, reproduce, move around, use reason, and make choices with its free will. But a superior creature is even better than a human because it can do all those things, or at least some of them, right? And it has a free will, and it always makes the right choice. And so you have this ranking of beings, but they're all good. The inclusion of any of them in a world makes it a better place, according to Augustine. And that's this ranking of beings that I just described, right? And so reason and free will are positive qualities. So if they're in a being, they make that being better. And so why do humans exist? Because humans add, right, goodness to a world. That's really what Augustine is saying. And so Augustine's response to someone like Mackey is that there are superior beings, but there's also humans. And when you add it all together, it makes for a good world. That's what Augustine is saying. And so, hang on. Augustine tries to defend this position with an analogy about the sun and the moon. And basically, what he wants to say is, a possible world can only contain so much goodness, just like our solar system. So the sun and the moon are good, but the sun is in some ways better than the moon. And so wouldn't our solar system be better with two suns? But our solar system can't handle two suns. You put two suns in our solar system, you mess everything up. And that's what he's saying about a possible world. You can only handle so much goodness. You only have so much space to put stuff in. I know that sounds strange, but think of it this way. If you have any two possible individuals, is the possible you that is reading this sentence right now, and the possible you that is not reading this sentence right now. Well, both of them cannot exist in the same world. Right? The me that is making this video right now and the me that is at the beach right now, they can't both exist in the same world. So there's definitely limits to how much you can put into a world, how many beings, how much goodness. And that's what Augustine is saying. The world's kind of like that solar system, and you can only put so much goodness in, even a being like God who is omnipotent. And so what is Augustine really arguing? He's arguing that this is the best possible world. It has superior and inferior creatures. Some of those inferior creatures, humans, have free will. What do they do with that free will? Sometimes they choose evil. Whose fault is that? Theirs. It's not God's fault. God cannot be faulted for creating the best possible world. So if there's evil in that world, then it's the fault of those doing the evil, the humans. Of course, again, we're just talking about moral evil, but that's Augustine's defense, right? That's how he uses the free will defense, and it's a very sophisticated defense, right? But it rests upon this idea of the possible worlds, and that runs into a problem. And I think we're going to be looking at that problem in the next set of slides. And there we see, right, his explanation of the free will defense. All right, so we're done with this one. We'll be on to the next one soon.